Welcome everybody to the May 12th MLAC meeting. I think we're ready to get started here. It's 10 o'clock. So Kara, do you want to go ahead and take roll?
Yep, I will do that. So good morning. I'll start with labor. I see Matt just joined us. I see Jill, Scott, and Margaret. And on management side, I see Tammy. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sarah. Ryan for his first meeting. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you.
John, are you on? Sometimes he calls on a phone, so I don't see John. And I know Patrick is out today, so you do have a quorum.
Okay, great. So as we always start off every meeting, I just want to take a minute. I want to thank everyone for their time, effort, and participation in our work before us today. I want to recognize this very difficult and important work, and I appreciate and value the perspectives and professionalism that everyone brings here today. Thank you. So looking at our agenda, well, and I guess before we get started too, a very great welcome to Ryan. Glad to have a new member on board. I know we're making our way slowly through reappointments and getting other people appointed. So it's exciting to see some new blood and I guess a familiar face as well.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So looking at the agenda, I see reviewing and approving minutes, and I saw it said March 10th and 17th. Was that, I think, the 17th and 31st? Was that a typo?
I think we had carried over the March 10th minutes.
Gotcha.
Oh, no, we didn't. That is a typo. It's supposed to be March 17th and 31st.
Okay. So I would be happy to entertain a motion to approve either of those, unless there's questions or anything beforehand.
Scott, I move we approve both minutes from as presented.
I'll second. This is Matt.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstaining? Okay. So moving on, we have department updates.
Alrighty. So I'm not seeing Robert Partington. Robert, are you on?
I am on. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I see him now.
Okay.
So we sent out, I apologize, you show up as your last name, not Robert first. We did send out the board's latest quarterly case law updates with your meeting materials. So I don't know if you had anything you wanted to talk about, Robert, or if you just want to, if members have questions about what was contained in there, we can do it either way.
Yeah, nothing specifically in addition to what we call the MLAC report, our quarterly, compilation of cases.
Do members have any questions about what was sent out?
I see Sarah's hand.
Thank you, Scott. I have a question on the notice of closure on the Adam F. Bruce case dated February 22nd, 2023. I wonder if we can first get more information. It seems, I don't know why the notice of closure was issued essentially, and he was directed to return to follow up, and it just seems like the details behind that are lacking. If anyone would be willing to give more information on that, I would appreciate it.
Can everyone hear me? I don't have at hand anything additional to the information and the facts and conclusions in the order, but is there anything in specific you'd like me to check on?
Right. Well, opinion, what he was medically stationary based on some previous x-rays. But he was recommended to avoid high impact activities and directed to follow up. So did not establish that no further material improvement in the worker's knee condition would be reasonably expected. I just don't know, like, what happened in that interim, and was he not receiving follow-up care? It seems that I understand that the notice of closure was premised on the worker's lack of treatment, but I don't know any details why that happened.
Okay.
Robert, if you can send me the order, we can send it out. The order probably has more details in it. Sarah?
Yeah, I just have the summary here is what I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, well, I forgot that you were probably talking about the summary. Yeah, correct. Okay. That's a great point, Kara. I have it on my screen right now. I can link it. I can share it to you, I guess. Kara, would that be the best idea?
If you want to just put the link in
order.
the chat. If you want to put the link
Okay.
in the chat, Robert, then everyone can.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I know I saw Margaret's hand go up briefly. Did you have, I know you're our WCB expert.
Anything but an expert, but I was just going to recommend to Sarah that the board's website is really excellent and has a more comprehensive finding of the board's findings of facts that would probably explain their reasoning a bit better.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, I think I put the link in the chat
All right. Yes, I see
to
it
the
there.
actual order. Yeah.
And there's also a note that Marcy has arrived, and Andrew Stolpe is also logged in. So got all those folks. All right. Any other questions for Robert? All righty. Moving on to WCD rulemaking updates. We don't have any right now. Probably next meeting, once we know what legislation might need implementing, we'll probably have a bigger update next month's meeting. So nothing for today. The next item is the Senate Bill 533 MCO come along report, and that went out with your reading materials, and Sally Cohen is here to talk about the report.
Good morning, Co-Chair Strickland and committee members. Happy to see you all here this morning with us. The MCO come along report was sent out to you, a memo from me on dated May 1st. So as you know, in general, an injured worker can request to bring along their own provider to the MCO under certain conditions when they are enrolled in an MCO. And the law was changed by Senate Bill 533 in 2013 to require that MCOs report to the director when they have terminated or denied a come along provider. And then we in turn compile that information and report out to you folks on an annual basis. You'll see the memo lists out what the MCOs are required to report out to us each year. The provider type, the number of workers affected, when the denial or termination was issued, and the specific reasons. So this year, each of our 4 currently certified MCOs operating in Oregon did make their annual report to us, and there was one termination that was reported to us in geographic service area 5, Salem. One primary care provider was terminated, and the reason was that the provider had failed to comply with the MCO terms and conditions after being granted come along status. So that is our annual report for this year, and happy to address any questions you might have about that process.
So I guess I have a quick one. So I know that the report includes denials and kind of the analysis of that. Is there a report on utilization of maybe how many workers are utilizing come along providers?
There is no report of that, Scott.
And do we have any kind of historical, yeah, I mean, you know, if this is an annual report, does there seem to be a trend developing in increase or decrease in denials of any kind that we could see?
Scott, it's been staying very steady. Last year, there were 0 that were reported. It's been fluctuating in the 1, 2, 3 area for a number of years now. So it's been historically been very low.
Any other questions from folks? Not seeing any. Thank you so much.
That's all of the department updates. So the next item on your agenda is legislative review, and this is pretty much an update on the House Bill 3412, which is the physician assistant bill. We promised an update at your last meeting. There were conceptual amendments. So we sent out the actual amendments with your meeting materials, and also linked on the agenda is the final version of the bill. We think they caught all the stray bits so that physician assistants line up with nurse practitioners, which is what your recommendation for support was. So, and I don't see the the physician assistants on the call, but there was no testimony opposition. I think we caught it all. It's currently on the governor's desk for her signature. So that's that one. That's one of the few bills that's actually done in the Capitol at this point. So, which maybe the miracle, hard to say. So that's it. That was just an informational update. There's no action required on the committee's part today. Oh, I'm sorry. There is in the chat. There is someone from OSBA if you have questions. Nick, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any questions from members? Okay. Not seeing any. I see the next, it looks like we have Workers Benefit Fund program updates.
So at the request of the co-chairs after your last meeting, they asked for some more detailed presentations on the worker benefit funded programs, which you're required to review on a regular basis. And so today we picked the one we're very proud of, which is our return to work programs. And Charity Steffen, who's a manager of our employment services team, is going to walk through a presentation. Baba's going to share her screen so you can see her slides. And Charity, you can take it away. Just introduce yourself before you start.
Good morning. Sorry about that. I was having an issue getting unmuted. Like Kara said, my name is Charity Steffen, and I'm the Employment Services Team Manager. I'm very happy to be here today presenting to you. We do have a presentation to get through, but I will do my best to be respectful of everybody's time. Baba, thank you for running these slides for me. I appreciate it. Could you move to the next slide, please? So the two programs that we'll be discussing today are the Employer at Injury program. This is the Early Return to Work program, and then the Preferred Worker program. Next slide, please. The objective of both of these programs is safe and suitable early return to work. Studies show that the longer somebody is off work due to an injury or illness, the more disengaged that they will tend to feel. It becomes harder for them to return to work. And so really that is the goal with these programs. We work very diligently to make sure that we can get people back to work as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. Next slide, please, Baba. Funding for both of these programs come from the Workers Benefit Fund. This year, that is a 1.1 cents per hour tax that the employer and the worker both contribute to equally. It's a tax on our pay stubs that we see, and we all pay into this fund. Next slide, Baba. The goal of EAP is to encourage early return to work for injured workers and reduce employers' return to work cost and reduce claims costs. And some of the ways that this happens as far as encouraging early return to work is by helping provide transitional duty for the worker. So once that worker has a modified work release, we work with the employer works with the insurer to help identify some type of transitional duty to get people back to work. The sooner people get back to work, the less time loss the employer has to pay. If we could get benefits on board to facilitate that early return to work, that's going to reduce the employer's costs as well. Next slide. So the employer at injury program is initiated by the employer and administered by the insurer. So that means once the worker has a release from regular work, the employer can begin these program benefits. So for example, if somebody's at work, gets injured, we can bring them back to work that very day if they've got that modified work release, and the insurer can help facilitate getting benefits in place. Next slide, Baba. In order for a worker to be eligible for this program, there's just a couple criteria that has to be met. The worker must have an Oregon Workers Compensation injury claim, or it can be an occupational disease claim as well. And I think it's important to note that in order to access the employer at injury program, the claim doesn't have to be accepted or denied. The claim just has to be made. It takes the insurer, and the insurer has up to 60 days to accept or deny. And so we want to facilitate that return to work as quickly as possible. The worker also must be released from work with restrictions. And that doesn't have to be a physical restriction. It can also be an hourly restriction. So for example, if somebody gets hurt, maybe they hurt their foot or their ankle, and the doctor says, you normally work 8 hours, we really only want you back 4 hours a day, but you can continue the same duties. This program, they would qualify to take advantage of this program. Next slide, please, Baba. Again, a couple criteria for the employer to be able to access these benefits are that they must maintain active Oregon Workers Compensation insurance coverage, and they must be either the employer at injury or the employer at the time of aggravation. And of course, they must employ an eligible worker. So based on those slides before. Next slide, Baba. The insurer is required to help the employer get benefits on board. So what that means is that the insurer will help obtain medical releases from the attending physician. They can help the employer identify transitional duty opportunities for that injured worker. They're going to be able to help process any request for wage subsidies. They're going to be able to assist in making those purchases to get that transitional duty in place. And then they will be responsible also for requesting reimbursement for these program benefits from the division. Next slide, Baba. When I get to this portion of the presentation, the next couple slides really go over the program benefit amounts. And so what I really like to do is just give a practical example of how this benefit actually, or this program rather, works in a practical application. And so an example I like to use here is of a young woman who's working as a dishwasher in a restaurant. While she's washing dishes, she cuts her hand quite significantly. And immediately goes to the doctor. The doctor provides her a work release. Make sure that that work release gets back to the employer. The employer really is in a bind here because he needs the dishwasher to work. He's short-staffed. Right now, this is a problem globally, particularly in the service industry. I think as many people know, being fully staffed is just an issue across the board. And so this makes getting people back to work as quickly as possible beneficial for both the worker and the employer. So in this particular scenario, initially, the employer thinks, well, she can't wash dishes. I'm going to bring her up front and I'm going to ask her to be a busser in this restaurant, and I'll have my busser wash dishes. While talking with the insurer, they determined that this really isn't a suitable position because this young lady's hands are in water, and so she still isn't keeping her hands dry, which was the primary restriction with this young woman. And so they help identify a new position for her with the employer, and that new position is her working at the cash register. And this benefit was great to the employer in this scenario because now the employer is able to provide quicker service to his guests at his restaurant. They didn't at the time have 2 point of sale pieces of equipment. And so this program was able to provide an additional point of sale system. So he now has 2 positions available. This program was also able to help provide her new clothing. When she was working in the back of house at this restaurant, she just wore shorts or jeans, t-shirts, whatever she needed. This restaurant really required her to have a little bit nicer clothing up front. The employer worked with her and helped her get a little bit nicer, more appropriate clothing for the position. Hello? I'm sorry, did I lose you?
No, somebody is not on mute. Keep talking.
Oh, sorry about that.
All right.
Anyway, this young woman, very successful in this position. The business also improved their service and their delivery of service. They ended up actually training this young gal also to help with some of their bookkeeping. So not only have they expanded their bench strength with this program, they've expanded her skill set. And so what could have really been devastating for both the employer and the worker, it really turned out to be a win-win type of situation. And some of the questions we often get are, especially with shipping issues right now, what if she maybe had a regular work release before the point of sale arrived? We would still move forward in a good faith scenario. We would get that established. As long as that work release was modified when it was ordered, the employer still gets to keep those things. And also was able to collect the wage subsidy, which is fantastic. It really helps offset the claims cost in these scenarios. This is just really, it can be a fantastic program for both parties. Baba, will you move through the next few slides? So we talked about the point of sale system. That was a worksite modification. So I won't get into that anymore. Happy to answer any specific questions at the end of the presentation. Let's move to EAP worksite modifications. Purchases become the property of the employer. Thank you very much. So any of the items that we purchase through the EAP program become property of the employer. When administering this program, the insurer will determine what's appropriate for the modification. All of the items purchased under this program must be linked to the specific restrictions. So in the scenario of the dishwasher, she wasn't able to, or she needed to keep her hands dry all the time. And so this point of sale met that requirement because while obviously she had to keep her hands clean, she wasn't submersed in water for her entire 8-hour shift. And so we were able to link that purchase to the restriction. The insurer is responsible for keeping all the documentation and the reasons for approval, which obviously they did in this case. Next slide, please, Baba. EAP, end of eligibility EAP or employer injury program. I'm sorry, we do love our acronyms. So what ends the EAP program EAP program can end when any of the following happen. The claim closes or is denied 2 years after the original date of acceptance on a non-disabling claim. For those of you that don't know, a non-disabling claim won't have a notice of closure. And so we use that original date of acceptance to determine that end date. Or when the preferred worker program begins, and that ties into the insurer ending the EAP program. A reason that the insurer might want to end the employer and injury program is if we are trying to get, or they're trying to get the preferred worker program benefits started, and some reasons they might want to do that. The benefit categories are very similar, but the dollar amounts associated with those categories are substantially different. So that's a great segue to start talking about the preferred worker program. Next slide, Baba.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I know that the equipment that's purchased becomes the property of the employer. The clothing and other things like that, would that then become the property of the worker?
Yes, the worker is able to keep the clothing.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Preferred worker program goals, very similar to the employer and injury program goals. The goals of these programs are really just to facilitate return to work as early as possible, reduce the employer's claim costs, return to work costs. We're reducing employers' return to work costs, for example, for the employer and injury by offering the premium exemption benefit, wage subsidy benefit. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that premium exemption benefit really is like a guarantee for any employer. If they bring back an injured work to the employer at injury, or if they hire a preferred worker who was already eligible. Safe and suitable return to work. Definitely the goal of these preferred workers in accessing these benefits. And also when a preferred worker starts employment with a new employer, as in not with the employer at injury, ensuring job readiness. So there are often times when, due to their injury or any number of other reasons, people have been out of work for a significant amount of time and possibly have a very specific skill set. For an example, a diesel mechanic, auto mechanic, roofer. A lot of these folks are required to have and maintain their own tools through the claims process. Maybe they've gotten rid of their tools, and this program can help provide those so that when they do have an opportunity to go to work, they have everything they need to get started. Next slide, please, Baba. So what makes a person eligible for the preferred worker program? A preferred worker receives that designation when they have permanent work restrictions that prohibit them from returning to some aspect of their job at injury. And again, what that means is any restriction. That can be an hourly restriction. It could possibly be that the job at injury required them to occasionally lift 100 pounds throughout the day, and they're no longer able to lift 100 pounds. And that might be the only aspect of that job that they're no longer able to do, and that would likely qualify them for this program. Next slide, please, Baba. And again, the next couple slides go over the benefits that are available through the preferred worker program. You can see these benefit categories. Over the next couple slides, you'll see that the amounts available through this program are significantly larger. Once a person is designated as a preferred worker program, this designation stays with them for their entire career, their working career. They are able to use this program at any eligible Oregon employer as long as there are funds left in that particular category. They can offer these benefits. They can access these benefits to make sure that they're prepared to go back to work with everything that they need. So again, I will just tell a quick story. We were chatting about a specific employer and worker earlier this week, in fact. An employer called. He has a roofing company. The insurer, Safe in this case, reached out because the claim was closing. The employer wanted to access or was encouraged to access benefits through the program, not particularly sure of how it would work. So we had done a worksite modification. Again, this is a roofing company. The employer has an on-site visit with one of our very outstanding and capable consultants, and determined that the worker was lifetime roofer. This is the skill he's developed. This is all he's done in his professional career. He's no longer able to climb ladders or work at heights on roofs. So the employer and the worker were both wondering how this program can help. What can we do? So through the on-site visit and the meeting, the determination was that through this program and with these benefits, we could help create a new position for this worker, for the employer, that would allow him to deliver roofing supplies from their warehouse to job sites. So this benefit is keeping this worker working, full-time employed. He's returning to work quickly. There's been no gap in employment, and they're providing an additional benefit to the employer. And the big piece of this a lot of times is that the employer and the worker don't always see the big picture with these benefits. And so in this particular case, the worker was really kind of unsure about asking for benefits, about getting benefits in place. He was feeling not very confident about being put in a different position, like he wasn't going to be contributing to the employer's business in the same fashion he had before. And there's a reframing of this program and these benefits that had to take place for all of the parties to realize the good that we were able to accomplish. So in this case, the employer agreed, we're going to create this new position for this worker. He is going to be driving a flatbed truck. We were able to equip it with a crane, and the program couldn't pay for all of it, but the employer got this incredible piece of equipment for his job site that allowed this worker to keep working. He would go to the warehouse, he would load all of the shingles and all of the other equipment and then deliver it. And with the crane, he was delivering the shingles and all of the equipment up on the roof. And so the big picture of this was, not only is this employer keeping the worker working, but he's also reducing the safety risk for all of his other employees. None of his other workers that were previously carrying 80-pound bags of shingles or boxes of shingles up to the roof are no longer doing that. So overall, his risk of injury, that type of injury, is significantly reduced. An incredible story. And this employer was very happy. Not only that, he's taking advantage of the premium exemption benefit, which exempts him from paying workers' compensation premiums on this employee for 3 years. It also provides a protection for him in case the worker were to sustain a new on-the-job injury during that 3-year period of time. If he does, all claims costs are going to be reimbursed by the program, and it won't affect his experience rating. Wage subsidy, the employer is going to receive a 50% wage subsidy of that worker's gross wages for 6 months, which is a significant amount for somebody who is working in that industry. Worker also got $500 worth of work clothing. We're able to provide tools and equipment for him as well. Make sure he had everything he needed. Again, this is a newly created position, and not all of the tools were available that he was going to need in this new job. So we were able to do that, which was fantastic. Baba, can you move through the next couple slides? And there are some benefits here that we didn't discuss. However, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have about these benefits at the end of the presentation.
I guess I had a quick question.
Sure.
Kind of before we move forward.
Sure.
So with the new position and new job duties and other things like that, are there any requirements to preserve the same or better wage and benefit package?
No, there really are not. So it's up to the worker at this point if he's going to accept this new position. Most of the time, honestly, I can't think of a scenario, although I'm sure it does exist. Oftentimes what we do is we modify a current position to get people back to work. When we create new positions, oftentimes that wage subsidy will act as an incentive to, at the very least, make sure that people are coming back to work at or even sometimes above the original wage. It's just, that was an excellent question. It's just not something that we see very often. There are plenty of incentives, and with the equipment, for example, the flatbed truck with the crane, was significantly higher than what the program would allow for. But the employer was over the moon to be able to have this chunk of money to put towards that modification in this new job. Everybody's more efficient, people are working quicker. So at the end of the day, there's quite a bit of an incentive there to keep people at or above their original wage.
Great, thanks. And I don't know, do we kind of track the outcomes on that at all? Would there be any data that we could have that sort of delineates a before and after wage and benefit package?
So we don't track before and after data. And I'm not sure if we could find that. Matt West, I think, is in the room, but I don't think that that's something that we track. I can certainly look into that for you after the meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Of course. And that being said, actually, we are at the end of the presentation here. I really covered most of these benefits. So just a couple things really quickly. The wage subsidy that employers get to take advantage of is a $40,000 wage. Well, they get up to $40,000. So once a preferred worker has been designated as a preferred worker, they have $40,000 to offer to an employer. And so with this program, there are actually two uses of the program. So if I'm the employer at injury, I have one full use of this program, but it doesn't affect the worker's use of the program. So for example, if I return to my employer at injury accesses this program, and then let's say 5 years later it goes out of business, I still have full access to all of those benefits, moving on again to a new employer for the rest of my career. And so that really incentivizes employers to get these benefits on board, and then the worker to use them in the future if needed. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Scott, may I ask a question?
Yes,
course.
go ahead. I
Great.
just saw the hand. Sorry.
Great, thank you. This is, wonderful benefits. I just want to know the best methodology of obtaining them. Is it through your insurance carrier on the employer side? Does the worker request it? Can it come from either? Are the resources, it sounds like the programs are really, forward thinking and out of the box thinking. And, is there someone to help brainstorm solutions? I guess just the methodology of accessing the programs is the impetus of my question. Thank you.
Absolutely, and those are great questions. So with the employer at injury program, so that would be employer initiated. Once a worker has a modified work release, the insurer is required to send notification to the employer that, hey, these benefits are available, we can help you get benefits on board. So the difference between the employer at injury program and the preferred worker program is that it is really how those are administered and accessed. So the employer at injury program is administered through the insurer. And so there's a lot of communication going on then between the employer and the insurer. That being said, as a division, we are diligently looking for opportunities to educate the insurers about the best way to access the program. So very important. Also actively working with the employment department to get out and educate employers, new employers, about access to all of the benefits that are out there. We are, so we're a very small team. There are, preferred worker is very small. For example, there are just 8 folks on this team. We've got 4 consultants that do the worksite modification, worksite creation, and then 3.5 positions that are reemployment specialists, and then they administer all of what we would consider the employment purchases, the premium exemption benefit, wage subsidy. And so we have a minimum of 1 outreach event a year, or I'm sorry, a month, forgive me, but we are often doing many other types of outreach in the meantime. And so to get education out there, we're offering CEUs to the insurers to help educate about both the programs, because that's where the connection really is about these programs, is through the insurer to the policyholders. Once somebody has become eligible for the program, again, so once a month, we go to the employment department all over the state. So we're all over the place, and we send out letters notifying preferred workers in those nearby zip codes that we're going to be in the area. We want to talk to you about your benefits. We want to educate you about how you can use this program to gain employment, how you can use this program to help you in your current position. Lots of people, what we truly have found that when people are eligible for this program and they're sent a card, once their claim closes and they're eligible for the program, they automatically get a card in the mail from the division that notifies them of their eligibility and gives them a brief snapshot of their benefits. But we are always actively working to try and connect workers with their benefits, educate them about their benefits.
And I see Ryan has a hand up.
Yeah, just more of a comment. Back in 2019, we had an injured worker go through the preferred worker program. It's absolutely amazing. Sarah, there are multiple consult companies out there that will walk you through that process and really just kind of hold your hand and submit all those next steps and reimbursements and all that kind of stuff for you. So I just wanted to comment. It's an absolutely amazing program. Love it.
Thank you for that,
Great
Ryan.
results. Yeah.
Thank you. We so my team is incredibly passionate about the work that they do. It's one of the few programs where we are able to administer benefits. It's a very personal program. We are very heavily involved with our workers and the employers. It's just a very sensitive time for anybody who's sustained an on-the-job injury. I work with some incredibly professional and dedicated people, very knowledgeable people. We have one gentleman on our team who's been with the program since it started, and he is just a wealth of knowledge. And we will often say, I briefly talked about our employer who was a roofer, and we hear this so many times. We don't know, we don't think we can bring this person back to work. We don't think there's anything we can do. And that's what our consultants are so fabulous at doing. They can, if we can just get a consultation, there are many, many times that we can say, well, what do you, yes, maybe this gentleman can't get back up on a roof again, but as an employer, as a business, what are your needs? How can this program help you bridge the gap between, where you are and where you want to be as a business?
And given that kind of shining example of it being a success too, is there anything that you could identify as kind of the biggest barrier to not having more participation? I know you mentioned the outreach and limited resources there. Is it, do you ever get pushback from insurers or, employers kind of concerned or afraid of the program some way, or workers not being interested in utilizing, or, is there anything that you really see as kind of the big hurdle that we're facing currently?
Well, in my opinion, one of the biggest hurdles we have are that a lot of our workers are unemployed, And so bridging the gap between the unemployed worker and the employer who wants to access this benefit. And we've tried a handful of different things. We have a partnership with the employment department. Workers are able to go on the employment department's website, create a profile and indicate that they're a preferred worker, and then the employer can go in, and when they're actively searching for new candidates for an open position, they can query that by preferred workers. The problem that we've found is that when workers are going in and establishing profiles, a lot of people will select that box that's they're a preferred worker when they're really not a preferred worker. And so it can be discouraging for the employer to do that. And then the establishing a profile on the employment department's website is kind of a long process. And so encouraging people to do that is sometimes a bit overwhelming for some people. So that's definitely a barrier. And then we also have issues with employers who are hesitant to use the program because we're a government agency. They might be concerned. They might have a number of concerns, but one of the primary concerns is that we might come in and look for things to regulate. Are we going to come in if we do an on-site and be looking for safety concerns? Are we going to want to look at payroll information? Are we going to want to look? And that's not our role. Our role and the goal of this programs is strictly to administer these benefits. Our goal is safe and suitable reemployment, and we do not get involved in the employer-employee relationship at all, and that becomes a concern or a barrier to accessing these benefits. The employer might be concerned, for example, if they hire a preferred worker, well, if I take advantage of this wage subsidy, or we get a $35,000 worksite modification, am I going to be required to keep this employee for a specific amount of time, or am I going to have to pay all this money back? We hear that quite regularly. And again, we move forward with good faith. If the intent is to hire somebody who's a good fit and that it's going to be a positive, healthy working relationship, that is the expectation. This program doesn't require specific employment requirements. The employer is never required to keep a worker. The expectation in the conversation between our staff and the employer is always, we would expect you to continue to manage and run your business with this preferred worker just like you would anybody else. If they're a rock star and you want to promote them, do it. If they stop coming to work and you would terminate the employment relationship with any other employee, then we do not want this to be a barrier to any business succeeding. The goal is for this program to act as an incentive to grow the business, to help a business be more successful, to be more efficient, to be safer. Those are our goals when we come in.
Great, thanks. And I see Jill has a hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Thank you for all that information. It does sound like, potentially a good program. If you guys have identified, the application process as being a pretty sizable barrier to the employee or the injured worker, have you guys made any steps to try to simplify it?
And that's a really good question, Jill. And so let me just clarify really quickly. There are no applications to be a part of the preferred worker program. So the application I was referring to was just to get a profile with the employment department to use their WorkSource program, which is different from us. We do work in cooperation with them quite a bit, but the worker doesn't have to do anything to be eligible for this program. The way somebody becomes eligible is through their notice of closure. And it's a data entry process on our part. Once the notice of closure says there's a modified work release, a card will go out. And then they just call us and they say, I'm working and I would love more information, or I'm not working, how can you help me? So really, there is no barrier in that regard.
Okay. That's good to hear. Thanks for the clarification.
Of course.
Any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for the report.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope everybody has a lovely weekend. Thank you.
And I'll just note, in Charity's presentation, the last slide, second to last slide, there's a link to a video on our website that goes into a little bit more detail about another worker story that's pretty cool to watch. So if you have time, that's a fun one to watch. So that's all we have on our agenda, Scott, for today. Just a quick reminder to members, I don't think we're gonna meet on May 26th. I don't see any reason to. Today I don't see any reason to. We'll double check next week, see if something's changed in the legislature. The next planned meeting is June 8th, it's a Thursday, it's not a Friday. And we're gonna do an in-person meeting here in Salem, so we'll get you some more details about that. But just a heads up, we'll have Ryan as a new member, and this is Jill's last meeting. Her replacement is halfway through the confirmation process. Hopefully that will get squared away at the end of this month. So that's our plan. We'll get you more details and probably within the next 2 weeks.
Thank you so much. And while we're in good of the order, I just want to really thank Jill for all of her amazing contributions. I know we've done some amazing work with the firefighter preemption and other things that she really helped spearhead with her leadership and her expertise and experience in that field. So really appreciate all your work, Jill, and happy that I had the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you very much, Scott. And yeah, this is a really big learning opportunity for me, but has really helped me with just learning this whole different side of workers' comp and just the army of people that's behind it. And I mean, I feel like it's really helped me become a, better advocate for some of our people in the workplace. And so it's really opened my eyes to how much just a firefighter can try to do to help the workforce of labor. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. And Scott, thank you for all your leadership. And everyone else, keep doing really good work, because this really does matter. So thank you for letting me be a part of it and being gracious with some of my lack of understanding on some of it, and providing a lot of education. So yeah, thank you guys.
Bye, Jill. Thank you.
All righty. Well, I think that does it for today. So enjoy the sunny weather, and everyone have a restful and safe weekend.